Hi there, welcome to Taking the Biz. If you're a first-time viewer, this is your one-stop shop for A-level business studies revision. In this video, we're going to take a look at the business cycle, or a concept you might sometimes see referred to as the economic cycle. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at the different stages that an economy passes through over time, and we're going to have a look at how that affects businesses and how businesses might need to work on different strategies at different stages in the economic cycle. So to understand the economic cycle, the first concept we need to familiarize ourselves with is what's known as gross domestic product, or GDP. And we can think of gross domestic product as the total output of an economy, of a country, over a period of time, and we normally measure it for a year. So gross domestic product measures the value of everything that an economy is able to produce, every product that's manufactured, every service that's consumed, so every table that is made, every car that is produced, every haircut that is done, every taxi ride that is taken. All of that over a 12-month period builds up to form what's known as an economy's gross domestic product. Now, gross domestic product fluctuates over time. There may be years where gross domestic product is very high. There may be years where it's increasing and a country is producing more, so we're purchasing more products, businesses are experiencing greater demand, and gross domestic product is on the rise. There will be times when gross domestic product is declining, when the economy is slightly less prosperous, slightly more depressed, when businesses are finding they're experiencing falling levels of demand, and so the total amount of goods and services produced inside the economy is actually lower than it may have been the period before. So what we can do is we can look at the different stages that an economy passes through. We give each of them a title. So when an economy is experiencing a period of very high GDP, but that GDP is kind of leveling off and reaching a peak, reaching a high point, we refer to that as an economic boom. And after an economic boom finishes, GDP may start to fall again and the economy plunges into what's known as a recession. And for a period of time, GDP may continue to fall and continue to decrease until it bottoms out, until it reaches its lowest point, until it reaches a trough. And GDP levels out again, and it's known as an economic slump. And following that, after a period of time, GDP may start to rise again and increase again, and we call that a period of economic recovery, and hopefully that period of economic recovery will lead to the next boom. So the economy naturally passes through phases or cycles, and it all depends on whether GDP is increasing or declining during that period. Now, during each of these different economic periods or phases, there are business winners and losers, and those businesses will need to be embracing different strategies during different phases of the economic cycle. So for most businesses that produce normal goods, they tend to benefit from economic recoveries and booms, where GDP is rising, where they're experiencing more demand, where consumers may have greater disposable incomes, where more and more people will be in work, when people are finding that their incomes are rising. For most businesses, this is a prosperous time. So they benefit from the fact that the economy is buoyant and the economy is improving and that GDP is rising. And for most businesses, their strategies during these kind of economic peaks reflect the fact that more people are in work and incomes are rising. So businesses are experiencing greater demand and they want to reflect that in their strategies. So economic recoveries and especially booms can be periods of growth and expansion for businesses. They may be increasing their capacities. They may be investing in more fixed assets. They may be increasing the size of their workforce. They may be looking at expanding the number of locations that they operate out of. And their strategies are all about trying to maximize the benefits that they derive from this economic peak, from this period of economic prosperity. So businesses will reflect that in their strategies. Strangely enough though, there are some businesses for whom recoveries and booms are not actually an optimum time for them. Businesses that sell what we refer to as inferior goods, goods that people actually turn their backs on during times where their incomes are rising. Think like things like payday loan companies or 99p or pound stores. For those kind of organisations, actually recoveries and booms are a tougher economic condition for them to try and operate in. So accordingly, they will need to tweak their strategies. They might have to look at even more rigorous cost cutting than normal in order to survive. They might need to look at perhaps tweaking their marketing strategies during these periods, maybe even broadening their portfolio so they start to sell goods that are perhaps perceived as slightly higher value. They might even have to look at periods of retrenchment or perhaps even delayering from their organization, maybe even sort of closing down branches if they're unprofitable and rationalizing the business a little. And so for some organizations, as odd as it might sound, the better the economy is doing, the more impact it might have negatively on their fortunes. Now, for most businesses selling those normal goods, they need to change their strategies during periods of recessions and slumps, because these are periods where GDP is declining. And so that means businesses are experiencing falling levels of demand. They're probably going to have to respond to that through the sizes of their workforce. Could be a period of redundancy. Certainly it may be a period where they're not taking on new employees and they're letting the size of their workforce reduce through natural wastage like retirements and people leaving the organization. So businesses will be looking to respond to recessions and slumps and this falling demand through their strategies. Certainly it's less likely that businesses will be looking to expand and grow if they sell normal products during recessions and slumps. It may be that this is the time when those type of organizations are looking at cost minimization, looking at aspects of the business where they can reduce expenditure, whether that be marketing, whether that be human resources. Certainly it's going to be a period where some businesses might actually be quite negatively affected. So they might find that they actually have to start closing down branches. They have to start shelving any plans for increased investment in assets. And so businesses are having to make some tough choices during recessions and slumps because they find that their demand is squeezed. They find that their profit margins are squeezed. They might need to look at strategies to do with their 7 Ps, particularly to do with their pricing strategies during this period. So it's a time when businesses really need to examine their strategies, and many may switch their objectives from those of growth and expansion and improvement more to survival and seeing out this recession and making sure that the business is healthy once this recession and this slump comes to an end. But then there's those strange organizations that sell the inferior goods. These are the ones that actually may prosper during recessions and slumps. There's good examples of budget retailers out there for whom a recession and a slump actually leads to a surge in demand for their goods and services. So it might be that as the economy starts to falter, as people start to feel poorer, there are businesses that we may naturally turn to now that we're on a reduced budget. And for those types of organizations, their strategies during recessions and slumps are all about capitalizing on the economic misfortune of others. So this may be a period that they seize upon for growth, expansion, improving their market coverage, broadening their product portfolios, looking to try and maximize their sales during this period because they know that as the purveyors of inferior goods, people are going to look to them during recessions and slumps. Demand for them is going to surge. They may start to tweak their HR strategies. They might need larger workforces. They may start to open more branches in new locations. They're certainly going to look at their marketing strategies. They might even start to push greater promotions in order to increase awareness of their brand during recessions and slumps. But the trick for these organizations is what they're going to do once that economy starts recovering again, and how they're going to try and retain these customers that have turned to them during a period of economic hard times, and how they're going to try and retain their custom as the economy becomes more buoyant again. So the stage of the economy certainly has a big bearing on the strategies that firms might pursue. How firms respond strategically really depends on the type of good that they sell and the income elasticity of that good. And different businesses have got to craft different strategies to remain competitive during different stages of the economic cycle. As ever, we wish you every scrap of luck with your ongoing revision. Keep on taking the biz, and we will see you soon.